Today, we're really excited to announce the GA of Redis Enterprise 6. Redis Enterprise 6, along with Redis 6, has completely redesigned how you're able to secure a Redis database. This is really exciting to the Redis community because it marks a shift in your deployment strategies to secure Redis. Today, we invite you to rediscover Redis with Redis Enterprise 6. I'm Jamie, Product Manager for Security at Redis Labs, and with me is Paz, our Director of Product Management focused on Redis Enterprise software. Now, today, we're going to tell you a little bit about the history of Redis security. Why bother rediscovering if you didn't know where it came from in the first place? Afterwards, Paz is going to tell you all about Redis 6, ACLs, role-based access control, and more. Then, I'll finish up with a quick demo of what we have. But without further ado, let's get started. I want to tell you about Redis Enterprise security before 6.0. Today, we're expanding on the data protection options that you have available to you within Redis. But prior to 6.0, many of our customers would use TLS authentication and the Redis password in order to achieve an authentication strategy. TLS authentication ensured that only specific services or servers were accessible to your production database, and the Redis password added an extra layer of authentication. What this didn't do was restrict access to specific commands. Now, restricting access to commands was possible. Redis Enterprise did it by blocking administrative commands. You were able to rename commands as well to effectively disable them. This helped people to ensure that they could disable commands that they didn't want to use. The issue with that was that renaming commands was global in nature, and it didn't make an exception on what user was using Redis. That all now changes with ACLs. Administrative configuration changes were also logged in the Redis control plane prior to Redis 6, and that's not changing. Configuring ACLs will be no different. These data protection options, coupled with a good security strategy holistically, with the security options that you see on screen, can help you achieve a Redis security strategy. Now, it's not just software. Redis Cloud will be taking advantage of ACLs as well. Many people express concerns about configuration commands being available in the database, and let me assure you, that's not going to be the case. In Redis Enterprise and Redis Enterprise Cloud, administrative commands for Redis have been blocked for a long time now, and the ACL set user command is going to be added to that list. ACLs adds to the Redis Cloud's access control and data protection options the same way as the commercial off-the-shelf software, but it lets you take advantage of the security and automation of the cloud. You can use Redis Enterprise Cloud with a peered VPC or a peered VNet and take advantage of our best-in-class SLAs. You can see on screen, this ranges from 3 nines to 5 nines, depending on your configuration. You can also set up multi-factor authentication for the control plane, and you can deploy in a single tenant or a multi-tenant environment. It's totally up to you how do you want to configure it. We believe in optionality. ACLs only adds to the secure experience that you can see on screen. Now, before we show you more, I want to hand it over to Paz, and he's going to tell you about the hard work he and his team have put into making ACLs a reality for our customers.
Thank you, Jamie. So let's talk about Redis 6 and ACLs. Redis 6 was announced as GA at the end of April, and it contains a new major improvement, which is Redis ACLs. ACL stands for Access Control List. This is how Salvatore Sanfilippo Antirev, the creator of Redis, defines Redis ACL. Redis ACL is the feature that allows certain connections to be limited in terms of the commands that can be executed and the keys that can be accessed. Note that we have here 3 dimensions. We have the connections or the users, the commands, and the keys. ACLs are about granting access to specific users to perform specific commands on a specific key space. Until Redis 6, we had a single shared secret, one generic user that can connect to the database with or without a password. In Redis 6, with ACLs, we can have multiple users for different personas and use cases. Each user can have different permissions and personal passwords. We could, in Redis 5 and below, disable and rename commands for all users in order to protect against commands that may be treated as dangerous for specific use cases, such as the flushdb command. With ACLs and Redis 6, we can restrict access to specific commands, but not only for all the users, but we can do so also for a specific user or users. Up to Redis 6, every user had full access to all the data, all the key space. With ACLs, we can restrict access to a subset of the data, so a user can access only the key space that is required for her. Let's see some examples of ACLs in Redis 6. Alice is a new user. The on indicates that this user is enabled, so it is possible to authenticate as Alice. Apple 3 is the password of Alice. The plus sign adds a command to the list of commands the user can call, and the pattern after the tilde indicates the keys that can be mentioned as part of the user's commands. In the first example, Alice can access the database with only the get command to the key names starting with the string cached. Therefore, a user who is authenticated as Alice can run successfully the get cached full command. The second example is about a different user called Bob. Bob has the same ACL as Alice, and therefore he can access only keys that starts with the cached string and by using only the get command. As a result, Bob will fail running the get full command as he is trying to access a key that he has no permission to access. In the last example, Sue has the same ACL as Bob and Alice, and therefore she cannot run the set command. Note that in Redis open source, the ACL should be defined for each user separately, even in case the same ACLs are used for different users. So, why do we need these ACLs? What are the benefits of using access control lists? By using ACLs, you can improve the operational security. ACLs can enable persona-based access for different users based on the requirements of their job function. Developers, administrators, and the applications themselves may operate even without full access to the data. So, for example, an application that only reads from Redis database can have a read-only ACL to prevent the application from mistakenly updating the data itself. ACLs allow to configure the access permissions of each user to reduce attack surface and maximize security. One can restrict the commands and key space that can be accessed by each user, making it harder for bad actors to get access to the files, to the system. Last but not least, with ACLs, you can restrict any user's access to the least level of privilege needed and meet enhanced security standards and compliance requirements by applying custom ACL-based privileges. Redis Enterprise has always provided a centralized management platform for multiple Redis databases. In Redis Enterprise 6.0, you can manage Redis ACLs for the entire cluster and apply role-based access control. In open source Redis, you define an ACL per user. Redis Enterprise improves this by letting you create roles, each with a specific set of permissions, ACLs, for the various databases. You can then associate these roles with the appropriate users. For example, you might have a role for users that should have only read access to your databases. This role should contain a read-only ACL for each relevant database. As part of this role-based access control, Each role can set permissions for one or more databases. So a role contains a pair of database and its ACL, which allows you to easily configure the required permissions for each role and its associated users. Redis Enterprise and its role-based access control enables you to set permissions not only for your databases, but also for the Redis Enterprise Management Console itself, providing a complete security management solution for your cluster. As we can see, by having role-based access control, Redis Enterprise enables you to scale your Redis deployment while minimizing the overhead involved in managing a cluster with many databases, multiple users, various ACLs, and different use cases. If you remember the example we had with Alice, Bob, and Sue in open source Redis 6, all the three received the same ACL, but we had to set this ACL to each one individually. In Redis Enterprise 6.0, we just need to create one role, let's call it cached reader, with the required ACL, and Bob, Alice, and Sue would receive access via this cached reader role. Well, Redis is known for its impressive performance, millions of ops per second with sub-millisecond latency. So we are happy to say that nothing has changed in this regard. Redis stays Redis even with ACLs. As you can see in this matrix, our test revealed that the effect of ACLs over Redis or Redis Enterprise performance is almost null, and even with ACLs, we reach the same wonderful performance results of millions of ops per second with sub-millisecond latency.
So first things first, I want to address backwards compatibility. Redis is backwards compatible by default in Redis Enterprise. Let's create a database to demonstrate this. I'm going to create the database db1 and set a password. This password for the default database access is for the default user. This is configured when you want to have default access that is backwards compatible with previous versions of Redis. I've set the password to password here for demonstration purposes, and let's set the port to 21,000. Now I'll save and wait for it to provision. This will be a momentary thing. Now let's access. You can see here that the database is already provisioned, but authentication is required. Now, if I just do auth password, this will be successful. And this is the same authentication structure as Redis in the past. But we've introduced ACLs, and this has changed dramatically. However, it does require some configuration. Now, if I do an ACL list, you can see here that I'm using the default user. The default user is the one that enables backwards compatibility, but you can also set it. If I go here and go back to editing the database, I can easily turn the default user off. This is just a matter of unchecking this box. And if I hit save and go back to the terminal, the ACL list command will now fail. This is because I've disabled the user that was authenticated in the first place. I'd also like to show you role-based access control. But to do that, first I have to create a database. I can do that by clicking the Databases tab and creating one. Let's name this one DB2. It's as simple as just that if you don't do any advanced configuration. You can then just go to the Access Control tab. I've already created a user called Test User with an email and a role. Let's explore the roles now. First, roles come with default roles that are admin, cluster viewer, cluster member, DB viewer, and DB member. These are the roles to the control plane only, but roles can be set for the control plane and the access path of the data. You can also see Redis ACLs. Redis ACLs allow you to configure your database access permissions. You can see the role My New Redis ACL. Creating a new Redis ACL is simple. We can just define +set, +get, and access to all keys. Now, if you don't understand this syntax, that's totally okay. We provide an easy needs assistance that helps you create this syntax by selecting what commands and what you want to do with them. It also helps you define keys as well that you want to have access to. But for now, let's just save the new Redis ACL. And you can see we've got an error because this already exists. So let's create a second one. Then, if we go over to our roles, we can define a new role. Let's create a new role here. And you can select the user interface permissions and the actual databases that you want these permissions to go to for the database path. And let's use the second Redis ACL that we've already defined as this access. Once we save, we can assign this to users. Let's change this user here to have the new role that we've created. Now we can see the test user can access the exact same database that we were on. And you can see here that this has failed. Let's see why. Let's go back to our roles here and check the databases that we've given access to. We can see that we've only given access to DB2, and we're trying to access DB1. And that's how roles work. We can ensure that only specific databases are able to be accessible. Now that we've provisioned it on DB2, let's try again. And you can see now we're successful. Now, we've given access to the set and get commands, and we've also given access to all keys. So I should be able to set the key foo to bar, and I should be able to get the key foo. But if I try to do an hset, I'm blocked because I don't have permissions to this command. ACLs work on commands, and they work on the databases that you're trying to access. You can also define access limits to keys. The scope and configuration is entirely up to you, and that's what we love about Redis ACLs. They're highly customizable. Now, there's one last thing that I want to highlight today, and that's Redis Enterprise Cloud. Redis Enterprise Cloud is intended for the people whose cup of tea isn't running software in their own cloud environment or on-premise. Redis Enterprise Cloud is fully managed by Redis Labs. You can see here, there's a specific tab dedicated to data access control, and this is very similar and based off of our software. You can define users, roles, or Redis ACLs in the exact same way that you can as software. The choice is totally up to you. Security isn't just on-premise, it's in the cloud as well. So now that we've told you all about Redis 6, I want to start to talk to you about the future. We've already built the foundation for database security. Our control plane has had role-based access control and LDAP authentication for a while. Redis as a database now has role-based access control and the ability to restrict access based on a key or a command. It's entirely up to the configuration. But there's one thing that I think will be really powerful to our enterprise customers. We're going to be working on integrations with an external identity provider for access control lists within Redis Enterprise. Through an LDAP integration with Active Directory, you'll be able to take advantage of your corporate password policies. You'll also be able to take advantage of existing investments and processes in your identity and access management ecosystem. And these will all work directly with Active Directory. This could be a password lockout policy, password complexity requirements, employee job changes, or separation workflows. I'm especially excited to see how Active Directory integration services such as Vault will function with Redis in this integration, but those have yet to be tested. We're really excited about the future, and we hope that you enjoyed joining us for the next evolution of Redis security. Now, I just want to set aside a moment to acknowledge the people who have made this possible. Redis Labs relies on a community of people working to make Redis great. So thank you to all of the open source contributors who have dedicated their time to help shape Redis. I want to give a special thanks to our R&D team. They've put in countless hours to make this possible, and we couldn't have done it without you. And thank you to everyone here. We're looking forward to the next step of this journey with you. Thanks, and enjoy RedisConf 2020.